Welcome to the final evening of the College of Business's 46th Annual Business Day. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome you to one of the college's longest-standing events. Hosted by the Dean Student Leadership Council, Business Day has been a proud tradition since 1979, bringing together students, staff, faculty, and industry leaders to explore the ever-changing business landscape. The College of Business believes that business has the power to transform lives. The Business for a Better World purpose reflects this commitment by encouraging students to leverage business as a positive force for change in their communities. Events like Business Day are a key part of that mission. By learning from leaders in sports and business, you're gaining insights that will empower you to make a positive impact, not just in your career, but in the world around you. Each year, we focus on a theme that reflects current trends and challenges in today's business world. This year's theme, Game Changers, highlights the connections between the worlds of sports and business. Whether it's on-the-field leadership, sports media innovation, or the business of the game, this week's conversations will showcase how sports and business intertwine. We are honored to host 8 incredible speakers who will and have shared their journeys, expertise, and insights with us this week. Before this evening begins, I'd like to take a couple of minutes to introduce this evening's speakers. As you may have heard, we've switched around some speakers and the order, but I'm sure you will enjoy all that we have to offer. We're thrilled to welcome Rich Karlis, former Denver Broncos kicker and business owner. His 9 seasons in the NFL with 799 career points, including the game-winning point to send the Broncos to the 1986 Super Bowl, are even more impressive when you realize he wasn't even wearing a shoe. The last barefoot kicker in the league, Rich Karlis has built a personal brand that served him for 18 years as CenturyLink's Director of Corporate Sponsorships and continues to serve him as he starts his own company, Barefoot Bronco Woodworking. After Rich, we'll hear from Kevin Coonan, a marketing instructor for the College of Business and one of the 7 founding members of the Green and Gold Guard, the NIL collective here at CSU. He'll be stepping up to discuss NIL money and its impacts on CSU. Thank you to Rich and Kevin for joining us today as we wrap up Business Day. We can applaud that. I want to take a second to thank the rest of the Dean Student Leadership Council, especially my Business Day committee, for helping me put on this event. I'd also like to thank Dean Walker, Dr. Maynard, the College of Business Marcom team, and the rest of the College of Business faculty who supported this event. I want to especially thank our advisor, Alex Dimer, for the incredible amount of support she's provided. Business Day is about learning, networking, and gaining fresh perspectives. I encourage each of you to engage with the speakers, ask questions, and most importantly, have fun. And with that, I'd like to invite to the stage Rich Karlis.
Mac and cheese night, huh? That's what I'm talking about. You guys got the good stuff, though. I was raised on Kraft out of the box, and that was pretty much my meals as a young player in the NFL, either that or McDonald's drive-thrus. So it's nice to get to come up and be with you guys. Fort Collins has changed so much in the 40 years I've lived in Colorado. The facilities are fantastic. I heard you have a Rambassador. That's pretty nice. You guys are familiar with that, I hope. I can't really see any of you if you're shaking your heads or not. But it seems like Terrell's doing a nice job for you guys, so hopefully you're enjoying that. Give you a little brief background on my career, my kind of journey. You know, I was talked into going out for football my senior year in high school. We didn't have soccer where I grew up in northeastern Ohio, and you either played football or you watched it. I got 2 guys talked me into going out, and I thought, well, it's my last year of high school. I'm not going to college. I'll probably go to work for my dad, and that was that. And so I went out as a punter, and they said, could you kick? I'm like, I don't know. I can try. I played kickball, growing up. I went out my first game against Canfield. I had a 57-yard punt. The guy caught it running backwards, turned around, and ran it back for a touchdown. So that was my introduction to football. But I liked it enough, even though we were a very bad team, we won 1 game that year, that decision changed the course of my life. I decided I wanted to keep trying, So I ended up walking on at the University of Cincinnati as a punter. Hopefully some of you know the difference between punting and kicking, but as a punter, they kept me and another buddy of mine, and no decal on the helmet, the crappiest clothes as a walk-on, uniform-wise, but I had that determination. Well, spring ball my freshman year, they said, look, we have enough punters, we want you just to kick. And I'm like, okay, I really don't know that much about kicking. They didn't have kicking clinics in those days. So I'd seen a guy kicking at Texas A&M, Tony Franklin, and he kicked without a shoe on. And I thought, why not? I mean, I'm desperate, right? I don't have very good shoes anyway. And what I discovered real quick was when I hit it good, it went really far. And when I did it bad, or I kicked it bad, it hurt. So it taught me to concentrate really quick. Ended up doing kickoffs my sophomore and junior year. My senior year, they finally put me on scholarship. Did field goals, extra points. They promised me a fifth year. When you only win 2 games and you lose 9 2 years in a row, they usually get rid of the coaching staff, fired the coaching staff. All of a sudden, they're like, you don't have a fifth year. You played JV games your freshman year. I'm like, excuse me? What? What am I supposed to do? I'm like, I was still hungry. I didn't feel like I, really had established myself yet. So my agent, he called a friend of his who was the head coach at the Houston Oilers. You guys probably don't know the Houston Oilers either. But the Houston Oilers used to have a team. They became the Tennessee Titans. I could use that as trivia for some of you. Went down to Houston, lasted 3 weeks, got the knock on the door at 7 a.m. Rich, bring your playbook down to room 104. Still remember the room. And by that afternoon, I was back in Ohio. Wrote letters to all the teams in the NFL for 1982. Denver, the only year they ever did it, they had an open free agent camp. Anybody who wanted to try out could try out. May 8th, 1982, 476 guys show up with their dreams of making an NFL team, 75 kickers. They held the kickers out until noon. They tried out all the other positions. They bring the kickers in, and they're like, look, we're behind schedule. You get 2 kicks from 20, 30, 40, and 50 yards. I'm like, I've been training. I paid my own way to come out to Denver. I mean, this is it. Went out. It's probably as good as I kicked, ever that day. And the old practice facility at 58th and I-25 was kicking them over the net onto a roof of a warehouse. And the special teams coach came over and said, hey, 192, what's your name? Like, who are you? And so they ended up signing me out of that camp. I begged them, and they finally gave me a $500 signing bonus. First contract was $35,000. That was a lot of money in 1982. And I was thinking, I don't know how I could ever spend that much money. Make the team, kicked against 4 other guys all through camp, make the team, play 2 games, have a game winner against the Super Bowl champ from the year before, the 49ers, and then we go on strike for 8 weeks. That's how my career started. The barefoot thing, when I look at it today, I can really, I have an appreciation for it more than ever, because you think about how many kickers have come through the NFL through the years, right? Lots. I meet people all the time through my different careers and business, and it's interesting how if someone says, hey, I want you to meet this guy, this is Rich Carlos, and they're like, oh, hi, nice to meet you. And then they'll say, he was the barefoot kicker for the Broncos. Oh, I remember him, right? So, as we talk tonight about branding and standing out, right, is like, what is that that makes you stand out? That crazy decision my senior year in high school and then my freshman year in college to try something different because I was so desperate, and I wasn't afraid because I didn't know what I should be afraid of. So, that kicking barefoot thing paid dividends, right? People recognized it throughout. Fast forward, retire. Had a great career in Denver. Played in Minnesota and Detroit after that. Retired here. Dabbled a little bit in sports marketing. There was a guy named Carl Scheer who used to run the Denver Nuggets back in the day. And there's some guys that helped him start his own sports marketing firm. So I was looking for something to do when I retired, so I hung out with those guys and did a few things and ended up leaving him and running a minor league soccer team that eventually I sold that, and the Rapids came into Denver. But I learned so much in that 3-year minor league period, because the one thing the minor leagues teach you is you get to do everything. Put signs up, sell tickets, help get radio broadcasts, sell sponsorships, negotiate player contracts, all that. So it was 3 years. It was a really good background for me. Fast forward to 2002. There's a company called Quest, which probably none of you know about, but today you might have heard of Lumen, formerly CenturyLink. Talk about branding and rebranding and rebranding. In 2002, they had a new CEO. They brought me in to help with their community engagement. I've always been very active with nonprofits in Colorado. So originally I was just coming in to help them reestablish themselves in that market, because the guy that they had running Quest before that, Joe Naccio, was indicted and put in prison for insider trading. So there was a whole new regime at Quest. So in 2002, they ended up firing all the sports marketing people. And my boss looked at me and she's like, well, you understand sports, so just keep an eye on what we have. We're not going to buy anything new. Just kind of keep an eye on it. I'm like, okay. 5 months later, I'm buying the naming rights of what was the Arena and Convention Center in Omaha. And a year after that, I was buying the naming rights for what was Quest Field, CenturyLink Field, now Lumen Field in Seattle with the Seattle Seahawks. Crazy turn of events, right? But through all that, the one thing I really learned about, for a company like that does telecommunications, it's a lot like insurance, it's a lot like banking, that you don't switch and buy those services every day. So how do you stay top of mind with a consumer or a business if they're not buying those services every day, right? So usually what we discovered is you switch providers if you were so angry about your bill and your service, or you were moving. So how could we stay top of mind? So when I started building these massive sponsorships for Quest at the time, originally that first naming rights deal was only $4 million a year in Seattle. It's now about $8.5 million, 20 years later. Was how do I move the needle for the whole business? How do I, when you look at a company that big, you have consumer business, you have small business, you have mid-sized business, you have enterprise, you have federal, you have state and local government business, then you have your community side, your employee engagement side. How can I build something within those sponsorships to benefit, each of those organizations? Because then they were going to be a lot more supportive of what I was trying to do, which was try to invest in the best sports brand in each market. In Seattle, it was the Seahawks. In Denver, it was the Broncos. In Phoenix, it was, at that time, was the Phoenix Suns. In Minnesota, it was the Vikings, the Minnesota Twins. So how to build those and kind of move the needle, and then incorporated all the research so that we would do a blind survey with fans. First off, trying to understand unaided awareness, all things that you should learn in your marketing classes. Unaided awareness. We would say in the survey, name all the sponsors you remember seeing at a game. And then we'd lead them down that path and say, did you ever see Quest there or CenturyLink? And work down that path of, what was your what were we in your consideration set? So, working with all those areas to try to better understand, like, what are we doing, and is it working? Is it moving the needle for the company? We would also hire and sign a player for each of those deals. Sometimes it went really good. We had Matt Hasselbeck, we had Joe Mauer in baseball, we had Emmanuel Sanders here, Chris Harris here. It was all great. A couple times things didn't go so good. Richard Sherman playing for the Seattle Seahawks, blowing up in the end zone with an interview with Aaron Andrews, dogging on Eric Crabtree, the wide receiver, on national TV after they just won the game. My phone rings. It's the general counsel for the company. We got to get rid of that guy, right? He's embarrassing us. Now I'm just a senior director, right? Now I got the general counsel all spun up, right? And saying, Stacy, we only use him in Seattle. They love him in Seattle, and having to talk him down from that. So the thing about sports marketing and sports sponsorships is that they're highly visible, and people are very, very emotional about them. That's the good part. The bad part is when things don't turn out so good and you have to talk people down. So 20 years of that, almost, with, in the corporate world, did a lot of fun deals. We did the new Viking Stadium. We did the Twins' new stadium. Did a lot of really fun deals. The Broncos, it's interesting today. I mean, the Broncos are now laser focused on what they're going to do about their next stadium, which could be a 5 to 7 year out situation. They'd like 150 acres of land. They've got it down to 4 sites. Now the game plays, right, of who's going to pay for the infrastructure, right? So lots of exciting things. If you're in Denver and around the Broncos, lots of excitement, So my corporate career, people thought I had the best job in the company, and I would argue I probably did. A lot of fun stuff, did a lot of good things for the different departments within the company. But you get changes of leadership, and I always won those CEOs over in the past, and ran into a CEO that says, I don't believe in branding. How do you win that argument? I didn't. Laid all the data on him, said this is what it does and this, why we do it, and wouldn't budge. So I said, okay, I'm ready to move on. So I moved on, and I was dabbling in my, we have a nice little piece of property in Parker, Colorado, and I was like, what am I going to do next? I believe that you're never too old to learn something new. So at like 61 years old, I tackled some projects for my niece that wanted some stuff built, and I wanted some stuff built for the house. So I taught myself how to build a table, taught myself how to build a Lazy Susan for her, and all of a sudden she's like, you ought to have a website. I'm like, I don't know how to build a website. Like, just try, I'm like, okay. So I built a website. I'm like, well, I got to have a name for my company. What am I going to call my company? And, at one point I thought, well, I'll just do barefoot woodworking. I did a search. Some guy in Indiana I'm like, what's the guy in Indiana got my, barefoot woodworking? So then I got to spend some time with some buddies of mine and that I'd done a lot of charity stuff with. And I'm like, hey, you guys got any ideas? And so I came back to them. I'm like, why wouldn't I play off of what I did and call it Barefoot Bronco? And so I launched Barefoot Bronco Woodworking. The name's way too long. I only use my Facebook and LinkedIn accounts. Now I have a pretty big LinkedIn account, as you can imagine. And all of a sudden I got orders. And now I'm like, I got to learn how to build all this stuff, right? And you can't be afraid to try new things. And this last year, I had my best year ever. The Denver Broncos bought a ton of stuff from me. I built a football-shaped board for them, and Kerry Penner, the owner, had me put the visiting team logo on it, and they put it in the visiting owner's box as a gift. Pretty cool stuff, right? I mean, I'm like, okay. And, there's a restaurant in New York City that found me, bought 32 walnut Lazy Susans, and it's a Korean barbecue restaurant. I didn't know anything. I'm like, all I care about is the guy pays his bill, right? That's a lot of money. And so my wife starts researching this guy, and she's like, his wife's godmother is Vera Wang. Now, do you guys know who Vera Wang is? Guys don't, do they? I didn't know who they were. I bet you the girls know, huh? Yeah? Pretty famous gal, designer gal, right? That's who she is. Anyway, it was featured in Wine Spectator magazine. And so my marketing, I stink at social media. I am, at my age, I'm just terrible at it. But I've had to rely so heavily on word of mouth and my relationships through the years that people come out of the woodwork and say, hey, can you build me 5 boards for some clients? Can you, Susie Wargen, who's big CSU alum up here, is a realtor. In the last 3 years, she's bought 70 boards from me to give as closing gifts to her clients. And so it's all those relationships, reaching out, developing those relationships. And then, of course, you got to build a good product. You can't be sending junk out. So for me, it comes back to that whole barefoot thing, right? I mean, it worked. And that's how people will always remember me. They may not remember my name, but they remember this goofy guy that went out in the snow and took his shoe off and kicked barefoot and made more than he missed, that's the way you stick around longer. So, I wanted, that's kind of my story. And I mean, I'm big on brand, and I'm big on, positioning a brand. And, the one quick story about Omaha is we bought this naming rights deal in Omaha, but the company wasn't willing to invest capital in that market to improve our service, our high-speed internet. They had a analog TV product at that time in the early 2000s. So I was always puzzled because it's like, why are we spending all this money on a naming rights deal, but we're not backing it up with good product? And I thought Omaha was, for me, it was a beautiful, building and did a lot of good stuff there. But from a brand standpoint, I didn't think we backed up the brand at all. In Seattle, we spend a lot more in capital to improve our products and services up there. The other thing that Seattle did is the business group, the B2B group, didn't advertise. They didn't have a budget to do any marketing advertising. What I would hear, though, is that, say, Washington would play Seattle, up in Seattle, our sales guys in Washington say, man, we've gotten so many comments about, at that time, Questfield, it gives us legitimacy in the market because people go, that don't know Quest, they're like, well, you must be a legitimate company. You have an NFL naming rights deal. So those somewhat unintended consequences, right? I mean, it gave us coverage in those markets where we didn't have a consumer presence. We only had a B2B presence, but it gave those sales guys, legitimacy in their market and really helped them a lot. So, some of those kind of unintended consequences of doing a deal like that, one of the additional benefits, I guess. So you're a real quiet group. I'm hoping that someone will have maybe some legit questions for me, or you're all in a coma from eating all that mac and cheese, which could happen. The other thing for me, big on community, the best advice my agent ever gave me was get involved in your community. You have the brand of the Broncos behind you, so use that and try to make a difference in your community. And I had two instances with sisters that had been through some domestic violence situations. And so I ended up finding an organization called Family Tree in Denver in 1984 and started a program called Points for People, where I got people to donate for every field goal I made, and really tried to raise the awareness of domestic violence in our community. In 1984, and you guys won't be able to relate to this, but people didn't talk about that topic. It was like behind closed doors stuff. So here's an NFL guy coming out and talking openly about it. We raised a couple $1 million for Family Tree and its programs. The Broncos were great supporters of it, but that program lasted well beyond my career, and to this day I stay involved with them. And I think that I'm a big believer that if I want my community to be a great place to live, I need to invest my time and my monies in it. So, I've done service to the YMCA of Metro Denver, and I'm currently just rolling off the board chair of an organization called the National Sports Center for the Disabled, which operates out of Winter Park. Been around that program for about 40 years. So I really encouraged you, if you haven't thought about, and I know as young people you don't always think about community service, but it's a great way for you to give back, but it's also the people I got to meet through that are people that I maintain relationships with even today. So it's another opportunity for you to meet people, get to know people, and make a connection in your community. So that's my pitch on community involvement. Does anyone have any questions? Sir.
I was going to ask real quick, with the Barefoot Bronco, is it just solely you working on these projects, or do you have a team behind you in that endeavor?
It's just me. So if I, and sometimes I'll get it, like I'm working on an order of 24 right now for a member guest, like plaque for this summer. So if I have to, I'll just work 7 days a week. I mean, I have a great shop in the back of the property, but I do have the guys that I met in 1984, an organization called Star West Productions. They designed my logo. They are teaching me how, this is my first foray. I'm getting ready to launch some YouTube videos on building boards, which is a little scary. But we just shot a bunch of footage. So I got a learning curve there. So we'll see. I'm a big believer that you can't be afraid to try. And like, we can always learn new stuff. Try new things. And I mean, this thing is like blown me away how successful it's been with just an idea, right? I was like, what am I going to do? I'm done with corporate. Yes?
What kind of advice do you have for somebody that's trying to break into the sports marketing industry and specifically like Major League Sports?
I think the tough thing with breaking into Major League Sports, the thing I don't like about it is, well, it depends on the organization. Sometimes they're unpaid internships, and they work you to death, and they make you sell tickets. I don't like that about it. But it's kind of their kind of proving ground. Like, can they, it's like probably like if you're an engineering student, they put you through all the calculus classes and make you quit, right? And go into econ like I did. I think the minor leagues you can learn a lot in the minor leagues because they're not as well staffed. So you get a little taste of everything. I think introductions, it was interesting. The Broncos, I was having lunch with one of their VPs of sales, sponsorship sales, and we were talking about hiring. And he said the Walton Penners, they're not allowed to use recruiters. So they individually have to vet all those applications, which is kind of good, but let's face it, the reality is if you're looking for a specific job there, and let's say one of the guys, is the hiring manager, if I call Derek and say, hey, you got to give a little extra look at so-and-so. I think, I've spent a little time with them. I think they have, because I'll have coffee with, I had coffee with a young person yesterday who's looking to get in, and I want to vet them because if I'm recommending them, I'm putting my reputation on the line with those guys. And if I bring them candidates that are duds, right, they're not going to take my calls anymore. So I think things like that help, but it is such a sexy field that everybody wants in it, and they'll go in it and not make any money in it for a long time because they're enamored with it, right? I think baseball is probably, I see a lot of people leave baseball and go to like football because, you got 81 home games, and like if you work for the Rockies, you got to be at those games, right? I mean, you have no life. Where like the Broncos, you got 10 games, right? So from a life balance, I'd rather do football. But once again, I think the minor leagues, like the Eagles down the road here. I mean, that's a great organization. I mean, they've just won over Northern Colorado. So I mean, I know you probably would love for me to give you an easy answer, but there's just there just isn't. you can play the game of, carpet bombing them with resumes, or you can work with someone to help you get that personal introduction. And like I was talking to the ladies over here earlier, I'm happy to help people get in the door. At that point, they're on their own. I mean, they got to sell themselves. Yes. Can you give me the first part of that? He's going to give you a mic.
Thank you. My first question was, what has your resilience to the learning curve look like over the years?
I think ignorance is bliss sometimes. I had a friend of mine, when we were in college, who said, "Hey, Rich, be realistic. You're never going to play in the NFL." It's like, hey, thanks, right? I guess I wasn't smart enough to know that the odds were so great. I was just so determined. And, the situation in Denver turned out to be perfect for me. It wasn't good in Houston. They had a established kicker. They weren't going to get rid of him. The kicker for the Broncos at the time here he was kind of in the doghouse with Dan Reeves, the head coach, so over a contract dispute. So, but I wasn't their first choice. They had two guys in camp. That's when Dan would bring 150 guys to camp, and we had 5 kickers in camp, and they charted kicks every single day. You were charted, and they had 2 guys that were drafted the year before in camp. Rex Robinson out of the University of Georgia that went to the Bengals, and Alan Duncan from the University of Tennessee that had gone to the Eagles. And so I was like 5th on the depth chart when we came in. We had a scrimmage at Jackson Field. Our training camp was in Greeley, and we had a scrimmage after, I don't know, a couple weeks. And at the end of the scrimmage, they said, "You all get three kicks." Rex gets up, kicks all 3 of his into the line of scrimmage. Terrible. Alan gets up, he makes a couple. I make all 3 of mine. The other guy, the vet, didn't kick, and one of the other guys from New Mexico, he just did okay. So we go to, that's when the Rams were playing in Anaheim. Played Anaheim in a preseason game in 1982. I had my first field goal in an NFL game, 40-yarder. I hit it really good, and it just missed on the outside of the left upright. No good. The Broncos did their cuts on Monday at breakfast. So this is Saturday. So you sweat it all weekend. Then you go to breakfast at the training table, and like Stan Jones, they called the Turk, he handled the cuts. And Stan, you're thinking, like, how can I get out of here without Stan seeing me? Because I'm sure I'm gone now. And I'm starting to walk out, and Stan said, "Hey, Rich." I'm like, "Oh, man." "Yeah, Coach." He's like, "Don't worry, you're just fine. Just hang in there." So I went back to the dorm, called my parents. I'm like, "If you want to see me kick in the NFL, you better come out next week for the preseason game." You have to talk yourself through those tough times. And in 1984, we're cruising to what ended up being a 13-3 season. I have a short field goal to tie the game against the Seahawks in Denver. Easy field goal, 25 yards or something. Totally easy. Hit it, hits the right upright, doink, miss. We lose the game. I didn't sleep. I was up all night. Go to Kansas City the next week. Need a field goal to tie it. Hit this beautiful kick. And at Arrowhead, there's always that real strong at the one end, a right to left wind. That thing was about a 43-yarder, pretty, and it starts to tail, hits the left upright. We lose the game. Drew Litton, who I don't know if you guys know who Drew Litton is, he's a cartoonist that became very famous because of me, unfortunately. He drew a cartoon of me standing in a football stadium, and the goalposts looked like this, like a fork. And I opened the newspaper that day, and I had to laugh because I'm like, he is so in my head right now. Because that's what it felt like. It was like no matter what I did, I was hitting these uprights. And people came out the next game and cheered my warm-ups. That's how bad it got. There was a restaurant in Lakewood that put on their marquee, Rich Carlos doesn't eat here. You know, great, huh? Feeling the love, right? But taking something bad into something good, on my steering committee for Points for People, there's a lady named Sue Hawk who worked for a PR agency, and she came up with this idea to go to all the restaurants. But Denver used to have two newspapers, Rocky Mountain News and Denver Post. She went to all the newspapers, and then they did a deal with a bunch of restaurants in Denver, and they turned it into a fundraiser for my Points for People program. And the newspaper listed all the restaurants that signed up, and it said, Rich Carlos, pay no attention to our no shoes, no service sign. You can eat at our restaurants anytime. So took something like totally negative and turned it into something positive that benefited a really important charity. But I'm not going to tell you, a lot of stress, a lot of sleepless nights, and usually the gamblers are the people that are the angriest at you because they're sure you did it on purpose. Other questions? Did I answer both those? Okay. Nobody? So my greatest highlight in my career for a kid that was out of a small town was, it used to be a big deal if you got on the cover of Sports Illustrated. I don't know if it's as big a deal anymore, but for me, after the kick and the drive game in 1987, most of you, if you remember, it's because of John Elway, but the game ended on a field goal in overtime. And ending up on the cover of Sports Illustrated was over the Cleveland Browns, I might add, who, when I grew up, the Browns were it where I grew up. And we got, back in those days, people could call and hang up, call your home and leave prank calls and stuff. And people in Ohio to this day, they're not happy with me. They hate Elway. But my mom got such a thrill out of all those prank phone calls, and she would hang that Bronco flag in front of the house every Sunday. My mom was a huge sports fan. So, but, for a kid that was a walk-on, really didn't have much going on coming out of high school, that one decision, right, of saying, I'm going to take a shot, I'm going to try, and it's changed my whole life. And I get to live here in Colorado, and I don't think it gets better than that. So, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Another round of applause, please, for Rich. That was awesome. We're going to take about a 10-minute intermission while we get ready for Kevin Coonan. So please grab some more food. I see some left. Grab some cookies, use the restroom, and we'll see you back here in about 10 minutes. Thank you. beverages, eating food. Really appreciate it. Nothing has changed college athletics more completely than NIL money. While, unfortunately, Director of Athletics John Weber was unavailable this evening, he's busy hiring a new head coach, which it looks like we hired. We are extremely excited to welcome Kevin Coonan. Kevin is both an instructor in the marketing department at CSU and one of the 7 founding board members of the Green and Gold Guard, the NIL collective here at CSU. The Green and Gold Guard has been responsible for providing revenue-generating resources for the Fort Collins community while providing millions of dollars to CSU athletes through their name, image, and likeness. A graduate of CSU, please join me in welcoming Kevin Coonan to the stage.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm sorry, I guess, that I'm not John Weber, but we have some good news. If you guys have not heard, just before the evening's activities commenced, John announced Ali Faroukmanesh as our next head coach for men's basketball. So we're super excited to have him, and you know, I got the call to if I would be willing to sub in tonight. So I said, sure, I'll pop in and I'll sub in. But before I get started, I want to give another round of applause to Rich. That was a heck of a speech there. So if you guys would give him a round of applause, I appreciate it. You guys don't know the drive, but I'll tell you what, the drive was one of the most impactful things in my youth, and it was incredible to watch. And that guy's the fact that I actually got to meet him was just pretty special. So. So if you guys have ever taken me in class, you guys know I don't like talking at people by any means. So I'm going to kind of go over some baseline things about NIL, and then what I want to do is I really just kind of want to open it up to a bunch of questions and just kind of find out what you guys want to know about NIL, and I'll see if I can do my best to kind of talk about it. So as you mentioned, I'm one of the 7 founding members of the Green and Gold Guard, which is our NIL collective here at Colorado State University. And I think I was in the wrong place at the wrong time when I sitting in a meeting and they said, hey, do you want to be a part of this group? And at the time, I truly didn't know what I was signing up for, but I said, yeah, sure, I'll help out, see if I can be kind of the marketing arm with it. And it has been a fun, wild ride. We created that back in 2022, May of 2022, and it's become an incredibly impactful for us here at Colorado State, and it continues to remain incredibly impactful for our community as well as the student athletes here at CSU. So if you guys are not familiar with NIL, let's just start there. How does that sound? So NIL stands for name, image, and likeness, and ultimately what it is the marketable aspects for any type of college athletes. And I guess let me tell you guys a story first. Back in 2004, there was this prick that went to my rival high school by the name of Jeremy Bloom, and he was so good at football, and the little jerk, sorry mom if you're watching online, the little jerk ran a touchdown back against me, and then I got to watch him go, and I got to watch him play play for CU. So here he is. He's a wide receiver for CU. He was really the kick returner is what he was. But what Jeremy was most known for was mogul skiing. And ironically enough, Jeremy's dad was a professor here at Colorado State, and his sister went on to have a lucrative poker business, if you guys are familiar with Molly's game. But Jeremy was really good at mogul skiing. So slalom, all these different brands wanted Jeremy to be a representative for them. So they started paying Jeremy in different, merchandise and cash, and Jeremy used that money to go out and finance his skiing trips, his competitions and all these different things. Well, the NCAA stepped in and said, hey, Jeremy, you are a college athlete, since he was playing college football for the University of Colorado. They said, you cannot accept these items. You either have to choose skiing or football. And Jeremy was basically like, look, man, I'm not trying to get rich here. At the end of the day, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to pay for my skiing that he was an Olympian at. I mean, he was a really good mogul skier. But in the end, he ended up having to drop skiing for his 1 year that he did play college football. Now, I don't see, is Coach Lubick here tonight? Shoot, I don't see him. Now, the great part about this story is that while Jeremy was a pretty good mogul skier and he did play for the CU Buffs, the one thing he couldn't do was beat CSU in football. So thank you, Coach Lubick, for smacking him around. That got my revenge from the high school problems that I had with Jeremy back. So I was always very appreciative of that. So, But Jeremy was really kind of a pioneer within this NIL world. He really kind of made a fuss. He filed a lawsuit against the NCAA. I believe a lawsuit he didn't win at the time. But really, that was one of the very first times where NIL started to become an issue. And then there was a kicker by the name of Donald De La Haye out of the University of Central Florida. De La Haye is a YouTube star, and he would do trick kicks. So he'd set up a water bottle on a field goal post, probably took his shoe off and kicked barefoot every once in a while, and he would kick these field goals. Then he just posted on YouTube, just like any creator out there. Well, same situation as any other creator, he was receiving money for it. The NCAA found out that he was using his skill that he was a college athlete to make money. And they stepped in and they basically said, you can no longer do that. And so that became a big fuss, and people started really getting into uproar. So the whole thing started kind of coming to a crashing halt back in 2021. And that was when, well, actually, let me take a step back. Anybody in here video gamers? Show of hands. 2014 NCAA football, we played that game. 4 streaks, running down the middle. You got your tight end cutting across the middle. Open every single time. I lived playing this game, man. Greatest video game ever. Here's the problem with NCAA 2014. They were using real players' names. Well, not their names. They were using their real players' numbers and their likeness in the video game. And the players were not getting paid for it. So O'Bannon did a lawsuit against the NCAA that he ended up winning, and the NCAA banned video games from utilizing players' name, image, and likeness within the video games. Thus, NCAA 2014 was the last version of that video game until this past summer when they brought it back. And I have not had the opportunity to play it yet, so I don't know if 4 streaks still works, but it was definitely a fun one. So that was one of the big changing points. And then it all really came to a halt in 2021 when the Supreme Court was hearing whether or not the NCAA was allowed to not, if they were allowed to not pay athletes. And from what I was told in several of our meetings with the Green and Gold Guard was the NCAA was not prepared one bit to lose that lawsuit. They truly thought that they were going to win that lawsuit. And it was a unanimous decision by the Supreme Court. They stepped in and they said, you must allow student athletes to be reimbursed for their name, image, and likeness. So this is a 100% tinfoil cap theory that I have. I believe that the NCAA at that point said, all right, you know what? If we've been trying to protect student athletes for this entire time. If you're not going to allow us to have or you're not going to, if you're going to allow them to be paid while we're going ahead and we're still providing them full rights scholarships and all the different benefits that student athletes receive, then here's 4 very simple rules. Now, here's the kicker when you start working in higher education, you guys know real well, anything comes out from the NCAA, if you want to change your shoes in the middle of a game, that is a 5-page memo at the minimal that is going to be sent out to each one of the schools to let them know what the rules are about changing your shoes in the middle of a game. When they sent out the memo for NIL, there were four rules on 1 page. Those 4 rules were every school must follow the state laws. And we're going to talk about that one a little bit here more in a second. That was rule number 1. Rule number 2, NIL could not be utilized to recruit athletes. You guys think that that's happening to this day? Yeah, it's happening. Let me tell you what. One of my friends said, back in the day, they used to just take the bag of money and put it underneath the table. Now they put it on top of the table. So it's happening. It absolutely is happening. Rule number 3, cannot be pay for play. We cannot compensate purely on athletic performance on the field. This has a little bit of flexibility to this day as things have kind of changed over the last couple of years, but that one's still a little enforced there. We cannot say that you will receive X amount of money if you catch X amount of touchdowns. And then rule number 4 was the schools themselves could not pay athletes directly. And the whole concept behind that was since this was name, image, and likeness, People like Markley Motors, people like Tynan Nissan, they should be the one paying the players for their name, image, and likeness if they're using them in marketing aspects. Make perfect sense until the collectives came around. And the collectives were started because people basically said, hey, if the schools can't pay the student athletes, we can. And we can go out and we can collect a bunch of money. So here's what, if you guys aren't familiar with a collective and what a collective is, we have, roughly 50 people in this room today. If every single one of you guys wanted to pay an athlete $100, you getting involved with that athlete, trying to get a hold of them, paying them $100, it can be tough. You're going to have to file, tax returns for it and tax papers and everything. But if we all 50 got together and we all took that $100 and we went out and we could pay that athlete $5,000, A, it makes a much bigger difference for that athlete. B, there's only one paperwork filing we have to fill. So it seemed like a very good idea to put these collectives together. And they truly are. The problem with it not being associated with the schools is a lot of the collectives had to operate without any guidance from the schools. There were some good things to that, and nationwide, there were some bad things to that. There were some people who took some pretty good advantage of that, and that whole case of like, hey, let's just take a big old fat duffel bag and put it on top of the table, that became the case. Now we had boosters involved in recruiting. There's a really great case out there, another fun story. Quarterback, he commits to the University of Miami, and he's ready to go play in Southern Florida. And the University of Florida comes to him and says, hey, the collective tells him, we will pay you $13 million over the next 4 years to come play at the University of Florida. But you have to decommit from Miami and come commit to us. He says, absolutely, let's do it. So he packs up, he moves to Gainesville, and the collective does not live up to their share of the agreement. They not pay him. And so he goes to the school and he requests for a release from his letter of intent, and they go ahead and they approve it. And then he went to Arizona State, and he's now playing at Arizona State. The $13 million was basically monopoly money. It never existed, and they were never planning on paying him. And I think the plan was that they recruited him there with the intent of that money, violation, and they knew they were never going to be able to pay this guy any money. So it became quite a bit of a problem in that sense. And collectives now can be, and collectives still are operating to this day, and they can be an issue in that regards. However, for schools like CSU, a collective became a very important way to become and remain competitive within the sports market. So we utilize our collective here to raise funds for NIL. We use it to distribute funds to the athletes, and we use it to engage our community. So we are a nonprofit, and thus we can engage within the community and all the nonprofits within our community to really help build a support within the community, use our athletes' name, image, and likeness to really help out those nonprofits here around Fort Collins. So it can be something that's pretty special overall in the end. There were a couple of other major business aspects that were created. Well, first and foremost, it is estimated that the NIL industry is now between a $1.5 and a $2 billion industry, and this thing started in July 1st of 2021. So in 4 years, this thing has grown to a $2 billion industry, estimated to a $2 billion industry, and there's no stopping it yet. So where we're at currently with NIL is honestly it's the wild, wild west. We're still figuring things out. That going back to that rule number one is we had to follow the state laws. Makes sense, right? State of Colorado, we have our own guidelines here that we have to follow. Well, the state of Virginia really wanted to be competitive in NIL and in payments of players. So when people started taking lawsuits to the state saying, hey, I should be able to do pay for play. Do you think it was the state's favor to go ahead and rule for that school that wants to pay for play so that they could get better athletes to come and they could get better exposure? Yeah, it absolutely was. So they went ahead and they said, you're absolutely right. You can pay for play. And they started going against all the rules that the NCAA had. And the NCAA still to this day is having a hard time monitoring these guiding these and enforcing any of the rules that are associated with name, image, and likeness. And so number one rule really ended up kind of becoming a disadvantage for the NCAA than it was ever an advantage of everything overall. So everybody in the NIL world is very much looking forward to April 7th this year. We have what's called the House settlement is about to drop. And there is a large belief so the House settlement is based of two major factors. One is a gentleman who's it's actually named after. His name doesn't matter. Grant House out of Arizona. He's going back and he is basically suing for back pay. He believes that the NCAA had knowingly not allowed players to get paid for their name, image, likeness dating back to 2016. So there's about a $2.8 billion settlement agreement that's going to be tied to this House agreement that will then allow any athletes that have competed in the NCAA from 2016 to 2021 to be paid for their name, image, and likeness. So that's kind of the first part of this House settlement. Hey, let's take care of the people that deserve it, that got, that people that really did need that, need that money. I have no problems with that whatsoever. The second part to this is where it's going to allow name, image, and likeness to go moving forward within the future. And really what this is going to do is it's going to put roster limits up. So you can only have so many players on a football team. You could have so many players on a basketball team. You can have so many players on a volleyball team. It's going to also create a collective bargaining where student athletes can then go through and they can do collective bargaining with the NCAA and different NIL opportunities to where it can be a little bit more fair for them. This is exactly what they do in the NFL now. The NFL Players Association does a collective bargaining agreement with the NFL to make sure that the NFL follows all the guidelines and all the rules that they want them to follow through. So this will be very, very useful for the student athletes. Think of it just like a union. It's going to be a union for the players. And then the last thing that's going to be able to do is there's going to be an enforcement that's going to be out that they're now going to be able to enforce all the NIL rules a lot more strictly than what they currently have been able to do. And we're all kind of looking forward to that. However, there is a very large downfall to this. I'm sorry, I missed the most important aspect to this. The most important aspect to this is revenue sharing. So NIL will also turn into a revenue share within the university. And what that means is schools can spend up to estimated to be about $20 million, is 22% of their operating income, $20 million to pay players directly. That means that those players will now be official professional athletes. It also means that they could be brought on as employees. And there's a lot of speculations we could go down as to when you bring them on as employees, are they allowed to have benefits and all these things? And that still needs to be ironed out. It still needs to be figured out. But it will allow the school to start directly paying the student athletes. And we're going to kind of move away. Since the NIL aspect was not supposed to be about pay for play, and it ultimately became pay for play. Kyan Evans. What did Kyan Evans do on Saturday or Friday? You guys remember? Did it against Memphis. Oh, he made 6 of them, baby. He was draining threes like it was his job. It was beautiful. My 2 beautiful kids are here today. We were accidentally stayed at the Memphis Team Hotel. They were the ones who wrote CSU on the tournament board inside of the lobby. I was so happy. I was such a proud papa. Gosh. So Kyan goes out and he makes 6 threes. His name, image, and likeness, his value in the sport just shot right up that day. And, it was great. We're all cheering for it. We're all super excited, but we're also like, you could miss the last couple too, please. Don't go looking too good. In all honesty, I'm very happy for Kyan. He played a heck of a game, and man, it was fun to watch him just carry that team over Memphis. But that really did increase his value overall. Neek returning to CSU. His value in NIL was extremely high last year. He's a very valuable player to us. So this was really good opportunity overall where the school can now pay these student athletes. Now there's a major problem that I personally have with all of this. That's called Title IX. Anybody in here familiar with Title IX, what Title IX is? It's the ability for equality in sports. Anything that's offered to men must also be offered to women. It's as simple as that. And with the revenue sharing, most revenue generated within college athletics is generated through football and men's basketball. There are a few exceptions with different universities within volleyball and women's basketball, and those ones can also, I mean, all aspects of it. The athletic department is going to be up to their discretion, I believe. Don't quote me on this, as to how that revenue sharing is split out. But they're not, as of right now, they are not going to be required to evenly split that out. So it still needs to be ironed out as to how well this is going to work out with Title IX. And there are some sports out there like water polo. There's sports out there like track and field that could be getting nervous right now because they're not certain if their sport is going to remain at the schools because they might have to cut cost. Think about this. That's $20 million that the university is not spending now that they're going to have to find a way to come up with to spend to student athletes. That's a big chunk of change, and it can be very, very difficult overall. So that House settlement is going to come out. It's going to drop April 7th, and it's hopefully going to clear up a lot for us. So in this business aspect, since this is business days, NIL has created amazing opportunities for you. If you are interested in going into sports, business whatsoever, there's some really unique opportunities. Agents became a big thing. If you like to sell, and man, if you have a legal aspect behind you, if you want to get involved in a legal part, becoming an agent could be a very great way to earn a living. Then we have the collectives. People are getting paid to run these collectives. I know a guy that's getting paid $300,000 to run a collective every single year. I second-guessed teaching when I heard that, to be honest with you. I stayed, don't worry. We also have content creators, social media people. You want to do social media marketing? Look, these people catch footballs and shoot basketballs really, really well. They run really, really fast. They do all those kind of things. They're not great social media people. So people like Travis Hunter has his own social media team following him around, recording things, and then putting the content out on YouTube and Instagram and all these different areas. They need these personal managers and utilize these personal managers. There are NIL consultants out there. There are NIL attorneys out there that you can turn to, that you can get advice from and kind of get guidance from. Here at CSU, we brought on some NIL general managers. These people are going to be responsible for controlling those funds, controlling that revenue share, and managing the roster just like it's a pro team. That's a new position that's been created because of NIL. And there's many, many more. Financial advisors. If you're a finance major in here, I'm sorry, but no, I kid. If you're a finance major, it's a good opportunity for you to get involved in sports that way. Become a financial advisor. I got some chuckles, so I can tell there's some finance majors in here. So yeah, there are different businesses and everything that was really kind of opened up because of this this entire NIL thing. So, so that's kind of where we're going in the future. That's what's kind of come with the past. In the end, I think that one thing's for certain is, no, just like in business, when you guys go out and you guys get to enter into the world and you get to explore and do what's next, I really do hope that anytime that you're running a business, that you always think about, is this fair? Is this fair for my customers? Is this fair for my partners? Is this fair for anybody that's involved within your business? Same thing within NIL. Can we keep this a fair market to where it does not damper the exposure and the entertainment value of college athletics? Because I was there against Maryland. Yes, it was a travel. There was no doubt of travel. But that was one of the most incredible experiences of my life. My favorite live experience as a Ram fan, and I don't want to lose that. I really don't want to lose that. So, so that's my spiel. I like I said, I just want to talk. I want to answer some questions. So, what questions do we have? You got a microphone we need to bring up?
I don't need a microphone. You guys hear me back there?
It's for the live stream.
Fair enough. Oh.
Sorry. Thanks, Eric.
Hey, Kevin.
Hey.
I'm going to tee one up real easy for you. Cause
I appreciate it. I need one.
Not because you paid me to, but because I can. Also, for my benefit and for yours, we both teach over at the College of Business. There's a couple of programs over at the College of Business which I believe would be really useful for a student wanting to get into this world, one of which you run and one of which I help run. Do you mind touching on those and how they might impact students' ability to work in the NIL world as a representative or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the two that he's referring to is the Sales Center, which I guess I got to plug mine first, I guess, and then the Music Business Center as well. And so with this is great opportunities overall. A lot of the education that we provide within the College of Business can be really good uses for you if you want to go and work in the industry of sport. And if you really want to work in the industry of NIL specifically, again, finance, financial advisors, marketing, social media marketing, but selling is one of those things that you do all the time. You sell yourself, you sell constantly. Coaches, when they are recruiting, they are selling the school. They need people to come in to help sell the school. So getting these basic core skills can really help excel you within a career within NIL. And in the music business industry, it's entertainment, and that's exactly what sports is entertainment. At the end of the day, it is a business about entertainment. And so I'm certain that you guys have some really good curriculum that can really help you out in learning on how you can be very effective within the entertainment industry. So yeah, that answer your question, Eric? I appreciate it. Thank you. What other questions do we have? Of course, up front. Should I just give
just with all the controversy just around NIL and how much it's changing, if it was in your hands, would you cut it all out? Would you boost it? Would you regulate where it stands? Or where do you kind of stand on that in your own opinion?
Oh, gosh. I hope John Weber's not watching this. Let me ask you first. Where do you stand with this?
I think personally, I kind of fall in the middle in the regulation portion. I feel it can help a lot of players kind of boost their just market themselves rather than even just a simple company. It can kind of go both ways. I feel it can also spread and kind of put other teammates down in a way because they're getting all the spotlight and you're kind of overlooking like Casey Evans. Like before, not really much of a player, but after this, he's became a star of the show. And how does that make your other teammates feel that now he's going to get all the recognition and they're going to look over the other teammates that were like feeding him for a shot, setting him up and things like that. So I feel it's a great thing, but it can also be detrimental to a culture and a team. So obviously it's controversial for a reason, so it makes it hard, but I kind of fall somewhere in the middle.
I think that was a great answer, and I wish I could just say ditto. I feel very similar to you. I love the aspect that it causes controversy on a team because I got to watch Shadir Sander get sacked a lot this season, and that's because his offensive line wasn't getting paid as much as he was. So, if you're blocking for a guy and the guy behind you is making millions of dollars and you're getting paid $30,000 a year, you're having a hard time finding something to eat at night. They eat a lot. Would you want to block for him? That takes a lot. It's going to depend on what your relationship is with them. I agree wholeheartedly with you. There are pros and there are cons to NIL. It is a great part to get student athletes paid. I really do believe that we do use their name, image, and likeness to sell their sport. The system was not designed to pay sports, and that's one of the biggest ripple effect that has come. So now the burden falls on the university and on the boosters, which ultimately also could fall on the students then as well within our tuition. Tuition dollars don't go to the NIL right now. But all that burden falls on somebody. And so how do we figure out how to make that work? And when the NCAA came in and gave us those 4 rules in that one-page memo, I truly do believe they said, screw you guys. We protected you for this long. Figure it out. This was going to become the Wild Wild West. You guys created this. This is what you wanted, so go figure it out. So I hate it. If I'm being 100% honest, I hate NIL. I hate what it's doing to college athletics. Actually, that's not true. I hate the transfer portal more than I hate the NIL. I think that we need to have a little bit more commitment. I don't think the transfer portal teaches to grit through things and really try tough things when the going gets tough. And I think that there are some more fair ways that we can go about doing that. It also doesn't matter what I care. At the end of the day, nobody cares. John Weber doesn't care what I care. And I know John's feelings on these. I mean, it does not matter what we at CSU think about NIL. The NCAA, it's here. At the end of the day, it is here, and we have to find a way to work with it and utilize it to our benefit. And that's exactly why the Green and Gold Guard was created. And I'm pretty sure I speak for majority of the board members that still remain on the board, where we are not we are doing a job in order to assist CSU. One of the tough parts about being a board member on this is it is 100% risk with zero reward. Part of the rule and guidelines is we don't want to receive any type of benefits from CSU. We're not doing it for that. We're doing it because CSU needs us to. And the board is an amazing group of people. Let me tell you what, 44 years old, I sat down that very first meeting. I started looking around this table, and we got the managing director of Deloitte, Chris Schmidt. Great guy, man. God, I love that guy. So incredible. We have founder of Coinstar sitting there, who was then the chief operating officer for OtterBox. We have highly, highly successful people. And they're like, what do you do? And I'm like, I teach college kids. And they're like, why are you here? I have no idea. You guys are way better than me. But then what I realized was I knew marketing, and so I could bring that arm to marketing, and it was really cool. It's been a great experience for me to get to see a business be built and us go through the legal aspects. I have learned so much being on this board and participating in all this. So while it does not matter what I think, it's here to stay. And we have to find a way to work within the rules and do our best to keep it fair. The other fun part is it up there? I'm a 2-time graduate here at Colorado State University. If you guys have ever taken my classes, you guys know I bleed green and gold. I freaking love this university, man. It is my passion. It is my love. One of the things that I absolutely love about this university is that we do things right. We don't do bags underneath the table. We don't do bags on top of the table. We follow the rules, and everything that we do, we are fully protected. If the IRS were to ever come to us and say, what you are doing is operating within your business realm, we can say yes, absolutely, and here is the proof of the pudding with it. And that was a core foundation when we met for the very first time. We all agreed we are only going to do everything that's on the up and up. We are never going to do anything shady. And that was 7 unanimous decisions. We said absolutely 100%. Because, again, my wife and I got courtside seats to the basketball game. I love Colorado State basketball. I love Colorado State football. I love volleyball. We are season ticket holders in all 3 of those. And if I were to get booted out of there, like, I'm throwing bows, somebody's getting hit. There's no doubt about it. Like, I'm going out with a blaze of glory. But yeah, it's at the end of the day, long answer to your question. I'm sorry, but it just doesn't matter overall. What I care. Another question back here. How are we doing on time?
Hey, Kev, thanks for coming. So you kind of talked about all the opportunities around NIL right now. And one thing that you hinted on that I was kind of interested in, you talked about social media management for these athletes. And I kind of wanted you to touch on that and what that would look like if a student was trying to offer these NIL athletes a sort of way to manage their social media, and kind of how that intermediary part of it works, just because you're operating with not only your company, but also the company that's sponsoring that athlete as well as the school.
Can you say that last part one more time?
Yeah, so like how you have the school that has their own system with how they want the athletes to correspond and what they want them to do. Yeah. And then you have the company that's actually giving them the money. Yeah. And then you have the sports team itself. And so kind of if you were kind of come in there and be like, hey, I want to manage your social media, or I want to do this for you or that for you, how do you kind of get through all of that?
Yeah, excellent question. Welcome to the Wild Wild West, right? Nick Saban, no longer a coach, doesn't want to coach in the NIL world. Completely understand it, right? NIL is a big factor as to why Nick Saban is no longer coaching. And because of the fact that he went out and he did an interview and he said, back in the day, I used to sit down with these families at my house for dinner, and we'd talk about development. We'd talk about the NFL. How do I get to the NFL? And he said it turned into a situation where these families would show up to my house, and the first thing they asked me was, how much are you going to pay us in order to be here? And that's not what college athletics is about, you know. That's never what it's been about. That's not the core foundation that was built on. So that becomes very difficult to work with the schools. There are people out there that the ethical compass does not point in the same direction as what mine does. And if you are representing a marijuana company, if you are representing an alcohol company, if you are representing something that may or may not be viewed as this is the most ethically sound business, and you're approaching college athletes and you're out there offering up $50,000, $100,000 to, I mean, if I offered you $50,000 right now, would you say no to it? I wouldn't say no to it, right? I mean, everybody in this room would say yes to it. Now, you know, the stipulations behind it, I probably get screwed in the back end, but you know, if I need to put a little THC leaf on my suit right here, give me that check. I'll do it, you know. Not really, Mom. I won't do that. I'm just kidding. So yeah, that's become very difficult to manage at the end of the day. One of the great parts about being here at CSU, and to kind of tie this back to CSU, is oftentimes we recruit for class, right? We don't just recruit for talent level. And the basketball team is a prime example of this. Everybody on that basketball team is just, they're upright citizens. They do everything that we ask them to do within the collective. They get their job done. And it's incredible to work with them. These are wonderful people. And if you ask me, the guy had Neek's elbow, you know, coming to his face. I mean, he deserved that elbow shot. So thank you, Neek, for not getting thrown out of that game. So with that, we don't have to deal with a lot of that problems. We don't have to deal with that. And the coaches do a pretty good job of handling it too. There is a little bit of locker room divide that comes with these kind of things, but the coaches have done a really good job of making sure that they have a thumbprint on that, and they're handling it overall. So not so much at other schools, you know, and that's when you end up seeing players bounce. And, you know, you're hearing now of players that have played in 4 different universities in 4 different years. Would you trust that person? You know, does that make it that much harder to get drafted in the NFL? Does that make it that much harder to get drafted into Major League Soccer? Yeah, it does. You know, I mean, it's just, you got to understand. I think the best way to describe that is, one of the biggest things that I want to make sure that you guys take away from this, and any student athletes that are out there, it's your personal brand, right? Anything that we do is always our personal brand. How do we go out and we build our personal brand? And that's the way that people think of us, the way that people view us. And that, to me, is something incredibly important. And I never want to give up my personal brand for something shady. And so, you know, hopefully, you know, it's easy for me at 44 years old to say that and, you know, to decline a $50,000 offer. But it's not so much, you know, at 21. I don't know if I could have at 21, you know. Lucky Joe's would have been a lot more wealthier if I had $50,000 at 21. So, yeah. Any other questions? We got one up here.
I actually had one for you. How does CSU compete in this? If we're going to be the good guys, the upstanding guys, if we're going to be the kind of almost mid-market university, how do we compete and not have, you know, Braden leave, have Neek leave, have Lake Evans leave?
Yeah. Good part about Lake, he's graduating, so we don't have to worry about keeping him. And he said, like he quoted, I want to wear a CSU for life. So that is an excellent question, and I wish we had the magic you know, the magic ball to look at and find out the answer with that. First and foremost, I think it's incredibly important that we always compare ourselves to our peers, right? We are not Alabama. I would love to put 100,000 people in our stadium. Fire marshal wouldn't, but I would love it. However, we are not our peers, or we have to compare ourselves to our peers. We are not Alabama. We are not Ohio State. We are not Michigan State in basketball. So we have to understand who we're going up against and how we're going to compete within that market. For us, that means the Pac-12, right? We're looking into the Pac-12. Look, Mountain West has, you know, we know some of the NIL numbers. We know where we rank within that, and when we're doing just fine in that category. But what is the Pac-12 going to look like? What is it going to look like when there's a bigger TV deal? How much are we going to have to pay for that? And that's one of the reasons a lot of schools are bringing in GMs in order to control this thing. I was very fortunate, actually. The Thursday before spring break, I had the GM of University of Michigan that just got hired on. She came to my class. She happened to be in town, and she spoke about NIL to our class. So these people are going to be responsible for figuring that out and really identifying, but making sure that we're comparing ourselves to our peers, not to anybody else. It will take a lot to get us to a level of a P5 school, P4 school now, and be at that level. Now, with that being said, you have some of your P4 schools that we do have a better NIL program for, and I'm not going to throw out names out there, but you guys can probably figure out, who are some of the bottom dwellers consistently in some of these big power conferences, and part of the reason they're bottom dwellers is they just don't have the money to pay some people. Some of these smaller schools in the Mountain West also have some of the biggest NIL budget. New Mexico is the largest spender of NIL in basketball in the Mountain West. Now they won the regular season Mountain West, but they didn't win the tournament. So all in all, making sure that we're comparing ourselves to our peers and just doing everything that we have the ability to do at Colorado State.
Hey, Kevin.
Hey, Patrick.
So I graduated from the University of Nebraska in the late 1980s, and in those days it wasn't the bag under the table or on the table. It was boosters having students come mow lawns for $50,000.
Yeah.
Only you really didn't have to mow the lawn. In fact, you really didn't even have to come over.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see it. There was actually a senator at the time who was trying to professionalize college sports, and he was laughed at. His name is Ernie Chambers out of Omaha, and look at where we are today. So for those who don't know, your tech transfer invests a lot of money, millions of dollars every year in aggregate in innovation that comes out of Colorado State University. And when that innovation enters the marketplace and companies make money, CSU makes money on royalties. So I ask you, Kevin, if you have either a personal opinion or a professional opinion, why not just create a minor league? Why not create a minor league that is fully professional, put the CSU brand on it, and much like tech transfer, we just receive money from that as a sort of byproduct of our overall brand? Has that ever been discussed? Is it even in the realm of possibility, or is that just kind of a speculative, looking in a crystal ball?
If creating a minor league has ever been discussed at CSU, it was discussed among the people that get paid a lot more than I do, and I was not involved in that meeting. So I'm not aware if it has or has not, but I know for certain that I have not been a part of it. What I can say to this is that going through this Wild Wild West, there have been a lot of very creative ideas that have been thrown out there, and I personally think that that several of them are very viable options, and I think that we need to explore some of them. And one of them is the idea that we should take football independent, right? Have football be there's no conference associated with football. It is a purely independent sport. It's still associated with the school. We still compete in Canvas Stadium. We'll still be Colorado State, but we will not compete in the Pac-12. We will not compete in the Mountain West. We will get to compete against the other people that we schedule games with and that we work with. Now, let's also take a little model from the Europeans, and maybe we throw a little bit of relegation into this as well. So the bottom 10%, they fall down, and we could break this thing into 2-3 tiers. Bottom 10% fall down, top 10% move up. I think that would make for some really creative and fun and exciting sports here in America, college athletics in general. But I think more so what this problem helps solve is your volleyball players at Stanford that have to fly to New Jersey to play the Rutgers. Why on earth is the volleyball team and the softball team and the swim and dive team and the water polo team flying 5 hours across country to play a game, when they could go right down the street and play UCLA again? They could play USC again. They could play Oregon and Washington. That's just so perfect of a solution right there for me. So I don't mind that one. And football is the main driver of NIL. Basketball's up there, but at the end of the day, football is the biggest driver of NIL. The other one that I heard was let's implement contracts, right? If you want to gamble on yourself, if you're Kevin Coonan and I'm ripe 18-year-old kid getting burned by Jeremy Balloon on that football field again, and I want to gamble on myself, and I come to Colorado State University and I say, hey, I want to play with you, but I really think that I'm good enough to play at Ohio State. Jake can talk to me and say, you know what, we'll offer you a 1-year contract. We're going to pay you $2,000 because that's all you're worth, Kevin. Pretty fair. And, but at the end of the 1 year, if you go out and you have a great year for us, you're out of your contract. You can go wherever you want. So, hey, I can gamble on myself, I can pick up, and I can leave. Now, let's say that I'm Kevin Coonan, 18 years old, and I want a college education. I'm really myself. I'm the third to fourth string backup, and that's being kind, right? But I want to come to CSU, and so I go to Jay and I say, you know what, I'll tell you what, I'll give you 4 years. I will work my butt off on the scout team. I'll give you great practice squads, and I will be everything to get you guys ready for these games. And all I want in return is my education paid for. And I'll commit to 4 years for you, Jay says, absolutely, let's do it. That's a 4-year commitment I have to live up to now. Barring an injury or any type of a major thing that will change that result, I think that could be a successful model as well. So there's a lot being thrown out there, and this is far from over from changing. Their conference realignment could highly be affected by the House settlement here, and what ends up happening within that. So there's some really good ideas. It's just trying to figure out which one's going to work best for CSU. Yeah. Still not on.
The lawyer in me needs to know the House settlement. Is that administrative settlement? Is it a legal settlement? And then the follow-up on that is, what about the federal regulatory system? Is there anything going through Congress that is working on this? Because obviously any congressional, any federal law would preempt any of those state laws and hopefully bring us some sort of balance.
Yeah, so I believe it's illegal. Don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% positive. I'm not a lawyer. I just like to pretend like I'm one. But I know how to use my microphone. So that part, I believe it's a legal aspect. And that this is part of the thing that's really tricky with this whole thing. So as Congress comes out and they do make decisions within the NIL regulations and what we can and cannot do, that becomes the main governing body. Now, as soon as that happens, the states go nuts, and I really do believe that the states are utilizing the legal system in order to ensure a competitive advantage within the NIL market. So they're oftentimes they're going to favor, and what's going to favor the universities, which are a lot of them are state governed universities, and so it makes sense as to why you'd want to have a good competitive athletic department at any one of Colorado State University. So, yeah, good question. Any other questions? Thank you guys so much for having me today. I greatly appreciate you. This was amazing.
Awesome. Another big round of applause for Kevin. That is impressive. He put that together in 24 hours. I think I texted you at like 1 p.m. yesterday. So very impressive. Well, that brings us to the conclusion of our event. On Monday, we heard the impressive story of Jenny Kavnar on her journey from our campus to MLB broadcasting, and from 2 venue management professionals, Thomas Carrier and Emily Meister. On Tuesday, we were able to get Hall of Fame level leadership advice from Coach Sonny Lubick and hear about the changing media landscape from CSU graduates Justin Michael and Ryan Green. And we finished our sports and business journey with Rich Carlos and Kevin Coonan, both sharing with us years of expertise that they built us. A big round of applause for the 8 amazing speakers that we've had this week. I'd like to take a moment to thank the rest of the Dean's Student Leadership Council for their work in putting on this event. This event could not happen without all of your roles that you've played in the last 3 days and their assistance in marketing this event, so thank you. Whether this was the only session you've attended or you've been here for all 3 days, I want to personally thank you for your participation in Business Day. It makes evident your commitment to expanding your horizons during your education journey here at CSU. Feel free to stick around a little bit to network, and we'll see you next year at Business Day 2026. Thank you.